Hello and welcome to Comic Cuts, the panel show. I'm Kev F, and my guests today are Shelly Bond and Davy Francis.
Hello.
Hello.
Comic Cuts. We're looking at a panel, and we comprise a panel. There's a few of us, so the panel sees a panel, and we talk about the comics from the panel we discuss, and we call it Comic Cuts. You could have shouted, you could have screamed, but no, that was tame. That was well behaved.
My excuse is that it's still early in LA and I'm not finished with my second cup of PG tips.
Do you know, I thought LA was an early to bed, early to rise city. Am I wrong?
Hey, I don't know. I make comics 24/7, so I'm part of my own network here.
Yeah, I guess comics is kind of antisocial. Whenever we think of LA, we think of the movie biz. But does it dominate the city as much as we imagine?
No, not at all.
And when we think of Belfast, Davy, we think of Blue Lights. Does it, the cop drama, dominate the city?
No, funny, I was doing a line of duty walking tour yesterday
All
with
right.
some American visitors. So they were very into the show and knew every episode and that type of thing. So we went around all day.
Belfast has become the new Hollywood lately, hasn't it? With Game of Thrones
It has,
and so
right?
much filming.
Crypto was filmed here. The new Blade Runner TV show was filmed here. Game of Thrones, of course. Dairy Girls. They filmed what's the one about the world turning, or
The one with the world turning.
You know the one
You
with
really would have to narrow that down.
Right?
it's a word series. It's come to me. It's the one about the guy out of the In-Betweeners, isn't it?
Oh, sure. I know what you're talking about.
Yes,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, well, listen, instant access to everything at all times has helped us, I think,
Yeah.
become a part of, become this really integrated in the global landscape. So, but you're in a terrific place.
Yes, it's lovely.
I do a lot of work in Northern Ireland myself. I was just telling Davy I'm going to be doing all of the art centres from Enniskillen to Omagh on down from there. And I love it because there's lots of great places and loads of kids hungry to learn comics. So I've become a Northern Islander-phile. But Shelley, you early on were an Anglophile.
Indeed. I always wanted to escape from America. And somehow I managed to marry the British guy, but he kind of likes it here. So we have yet to migrate back to England, which is my goal one day, to live in London. But yeah, I think since I discovered David Bowie in 1974 at overnight camp, I heard Rebel Rebel on the radio, Davy, and that was it. I just loved David Bowie and was inspired by British music. And here we are.
I mean, it's very much a case of the other man's grass is always, well, in the case of Britain, the other man's grass is always flooded, I think.
Well, certainly in LA, the grass isn't green, it's brown, isn't it?
What was your music as a kid?
Music? Well, that was the Beatles, really, first off. And then, funny enough, a guy called Jackie Burns, I was at school with. You might know him as Jake Burns from Stiff Little Fingers.
Wow.
We were in school together, and actually, we were the only two people in our class who passed the 11 plus, and we both won an English composition prize for Thai food tea, not PG tips, Thai food tea, and we had to go up in front of the class and get our certificates. But he said, "Oh, come back to the house at lunchtime." We lived his house was near the school, and we went back to his house at lunchtime, reading comics and that type of thing. And he put on some of his dad's music. And one of the pieces of music he put on was, and I've forgotten it now. It's a great guitar tune. There's no words in it.
Do you know what? I'm going to have great fun editing out the bits where we're almost remembering.
I know, but remember that.
It's the one where the world turns.
I'm so nervous about being in front of millions of people. You see, that's what it is.
I heard there were only 3 people that are watching and listening to this, right?
I think that's dangerously close to the truth.
I have to know, though, please tell me, you said you were into the Beatles. I'm a Kinks fan. Did you like the Kinks as well?
Oh, yes, the Kinks, yes.
All right.
Yes, dedicated Father Passion and Waterloo Road. And you know it's lovely in France? They sing Aux Champs-Élysées, which is the same tune, and
Mm.
it's a lovely tune. But it's Waterloo Road.
I hate to be that guy, but it's Waterloo Sunset.
Oh, Waterloo Sunset.
I'm going to feel really unkind every time I correct you on anything, Davy. And yet I can't help thinking it's going to happen.
That's your job. Come on, Kev. That's your job.
Shelley, how hard was it to come across this music when you were a kid growing up? Because it's not like there was MTV and it's not like you could dial up any tune. How did you hear the stuff?
Oh, come on. I'm not 100 yet. I turned 100 in 2 months.
Was it college radio?
No, it was way before that. And by the way, Kev, there was life before MTV, although my life did start on August 1st, 1981. I was glued to MTV. And I did walk around dreaming of meeting Adamant, of course. But we actually I lived outside of Philadelphia. So I was an hour and 6 minutes from a major metropolitan area. So I would go to record shops, and I was sometimes lucky enough to yank an import out of somebody's hand and run to the register. And I also found out a lot about British music from cable television, because there was a show called Night Flight that would run like on weekends from midnight to 3, and I'd be watching it in my attic on a black and white TV, which does make me sound like I'm 100. But they ran Erga Music War, the video. You know, I discovered like the Clash and other bands just by accident, by staying up late and, you know, being bad and watching TV. But don't forget, the Kinks they had a big album out in like 79. So, you know, we kind of got that second wave of mod. And, you know, a lot of that music came over to the States, and most people didn't like it, but I didn't care. I kind of did my own thing and I gravitated towards it, and here we are.
This was a big divide that we found back here, because we'd have our bands that we were championing, the British bands, the homegrown bands, especially punk and new wave when I was growing up. And then we'd have our fingers crossed that they were going to break the States. And then we'd send them all over there. And like The Flock of Seagulls would be the hit. And everybody else would come back with their tails between their legs.
Ridiculous, right? I mean, those were not the bands that we wanted. You know, I think Breaking America was so different back then in the early 80s. But you guys, to this day, have superior songwriters and musicians, I will say. I mean, you know, Suede, Pulp, come on. You guys create the next wave superstars. And I think a lot of, you know, bands like The Cure and Echo and the Bunnymen, they made it over and got pretty huge on college radio. You know, I was a DJ in college, so I like to think I helped usher in that next wave of synth pop, a little bit new romantic, punk and new wave.
Well, yeah, the 90s when you were Vertigo. Vertigo was you were Vertigo. And the music of the then Britpop era and comics had a big crossover. There was, of course, Philip Bond, your future husband, working for Deadline alongside Jamie Hewlett, who would become Gorillaz. And there was another band whose comic
Cud.
I bought recently, Cud.
Yes.
Because I just bought Geezer.
The
I bought
Cud
it, in fact,
band, right?
from Will Potter.
The Cud Band should have made it big in the States. The Cud Band should have been a part of Britpop. Sadly, they were probably a year and a half too early for that. But they're brilliant. Davy, do you know the Cud Band?
Yeah, are you familiar with Cud?
I've never heard of the Cud. I've remembered the name of that song.
Oh, yeah.
It's called Albatross.
Albatross by Fleetwood Mac.
By Fleetwood Mac, yes. And I'd never heard anything like it before. It blew my mind because I was so used to the Beatles.
I'm racking my brain trying to find a link between Albatross and Cud to get us back to where we were. And they don't even have any letters in common.
Very weird.
Well, Cud is duck backwards and they're both birds, aren't they? So
there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well,
there we have
Davy
it.
wins 200 points for Davy on this. I wasn't even sure if this was a game show. There we go.
I think we're definitely introducing that competitive round. Now, to return us to the subject in hand, my two guests have brought with them a panel from a comic or something close, and we're going to see if we can identify it and talk about it. Maybe we'll learn something about comics and something about our guests, or maybe we'll just show off and have a fun chat. Maybe we'll win points in the new game show element, which is what's Davy going to remember next? Let's see. So we've all brought in panels, and I'm going to start, Davy, by looking at the panel you have brought in. Now, before you give away any secrets, Shelley, I'm going to ask you to describe what you see. Listeners at home, you'll find this image on the show notes. You'll find it on the holding image. If you're watching on YouTube, it's there on the screen and it's on the website. But you shouldn't need any of those because Shelley, through the gift of her verbal powers, shall now describe what are we looking at?
We are looking at a two-shot. And I like to call this one the Great American Earshot. It's a two-shot that shows profiles of two people having a conversation. The man on the left is an elderly gent, and we know this because he's pointing his finger at the person on the right. The young person who looks a bit startled, and he knows someone's wagging a finger at him. That young person has dark hair, looks like he might be a teenager, and there is definitely a discussion going on that looks a bit terse. We've got a narrative caption, and then we've got what looks like a thought balloon, but it clearly is not going to the person's head. So it's a scalloped balloon that's pointing to the man on the left who has something definitive to say, and the person on the right also has a scalloped balloon, and he's responding. The background looks like they're in an office or a house. We see some blinds that are drawn. So something's afoot.
Can I just say that is the most perfect technical description of a panel that we have ever had on this podcast to date. Shelley is an editor. Shelley is the editor's editor.
I'd like to be paid in British chocolate for that.
Yeah. Hey, that must be something you miss in LA.
Oh, yes. I'm a Yorkie milk chocolate kind of person. For anybody listening who wants to send me chocolate.
And there you go. Just address it to Shelley Bond, LA. It'll get there. So from my point of view, if I can just chip in with the panelologist's description of the panel, I really can't do better than Shelley. Shelley really knows the technology. In fact, scalloped balloons, I would not have known that. I would have said they're a slightly bubbly shape, which is the shape that one formerly makes thought bubbles. Thought bubbles are usually lumpy, a balloony shape or cloud shape, and voice bubbles, speech bubbles, balloons. I say
word
bubble rather than balloons. Word balloons are usually a smoother shape. This comic's not doing that, which suggests to me this is from before the times when these rules had been much more set in stone, much more regulated. There's also, I think, a few rules being broken, aren't they? The heads overlapping the balloons to the degree they do. The size of the lettering, slightly larger than I think we subsequently become used to. And the guy on the right, the child on the right, his eye is simply a dot in the French ligne claire style. And that suggests to me that this drawing could be as long ago as the 30s. Shelley, would you like to have a guess at what you think we're looking at?
No.
Well, I want you to.
I really have no idea. I look at the lettering and it's beautiful. And it suggests to me that it might even be digital. And I hope it's not, because I'm a big fan of hand lettering. But it looks to me like it could be from the 30s, but it looks to me like it could also be from 2022. I'm not sure.
Well, Davy, you're going to have to put us out of our misery. I'm going to make my one stab guess. Because the kid is called Billy. The kid is being pointed to. The old man is saying, nothing's been heard of Savannah for some time, Billy. Go out and dig something.
Oh, sorry. Shazam.
I think I was going to say the same as Shelley's just said, that it could be
I think I'm going to get more chocolate than you, Kev.
You're both.
To be fair, I didn't read. You showed me the image and you told me to describe it, and I didn't read it. I didn't have a moment to read it. But now that you said Billy.
So tell us more.
I have to step on your hands and toes. And I'm going to say Marvel Shazam.
Captain.
So that would be the character Captain Marvel,
Yes.
created by C.C. Beck.
That's correct.
And published by, I don't know who.
Oh, I can't remember who it was, but the unusual thing about this strip is that it was drawn by Jack Kirby.
Really? So tell us, are we right about it being the original Captain Marvel?
It is the original Captain Marvel, and it came out in the same month. Was it May 1941 as in America? So at the time, Kirby was ghosting different strips, and of course he drew Green Arrow and things like that, and a lot, and created the Challengers of the Unknown for DC.
Yeah.
But it was his triad Captain Marvel.
So where does this come from? Because it's in black and white rather than color, which it would have originally been printed in.
Came from a website.
Right.
I just cut it off. I should really look for a color version, but it's quite nice in black and white, isn't it?
It is. I prefer an awful lot of stuff in black and white simply because the colouring quite often didn't do justice to the artwork in the early days of printing.
It adds a sort of a 80s zine look to it, doesn't it, or something like that?
Well,
something more contemporary.
It's a nice high contrast. It's very few lines.
I was going to say one artist that you've worked with a lot, Shelley, Michael Allred. His style is very heavily influenced by this kind of original, I wouldn't say retro, but I'd say style from back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mike Allred is one of the masters of my generation in terms of spotting blacks and really utilizing that high contrast between positive and negative spaces on the page, and a master of really using very few lines, mostly using one solid line to really articulate every gesture and every background and every moment, that we're faking when we're trying to show motion on a 2D surface. So, yeah.
That term spotting blacks is one that I haven't heard for a long time. It really goes back to the black and white outline days of artwork, which I was obviously doing when I was inking Marvel art in the 1990s. But in more recent years, the colouring techniques have played a dominant part, haven't they, in the finished artwork?
Yeah, but I still think that it's important for anyone, editor, artist, writer, to think about how comics really work best in black and white. To me, color can't save an illustration or a page if the art isn't all there in black and white. So I tend to be the kind of editor to make sure that before any color is even considered, the artist really captures what we need on the page. The nuance really separates the background, midground, foreground, and tells the story that needs to be told in high contrast black and white before anything else adds to it, because color cannot save bad art. And I think that happens a lot in comics now, where people just keep throwing color and throwing effects on the page. And, it's hard to know what to read first. And when you break the reading order of a comic, you break the story.
Yeah.
It's a complete fail.
I mean, technology has played a big part in that because a lot of people are working on the screen and they're working in layers. And whereas once upon a time, you had to have the pencils followed by the inks because only the inks would print, and the printing was so primitive that only bold inks would print and fine hatching wouldn't and pencils wouldn't. That changed, 30, 40 years ago. But now a lot of those processes aren't even the processes people use, are they?
It's true. And I'm curious what Davy thinks about that. Davy, do you think it's important for an artist to be able to finish a panel or a page in line before going on to color?
Yeah, well, I do that. I'm sort of a bit backward about technology. I don't really have access to Photoshop and that type of thing, but I have dabbled with it. But I prefer it just to do the whole thing, the whole page and as is. And I don't even use pencils. Sometimes the only pencils I'll use are for the actual frame outlines.
Really?
For the panel borders?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
What characterizes your artwork for me, Davy, is the fineness of your lines. You do shaping and sculpting and hatching in your cartoon drawings. And listener, if you don't know Davy's work, check out the entire back catalogue of Oink. And especially if you can ever find a comic called Hoof Hearted. It's a Western comic whose title is best said by Davy. What's the magazine called, Davy?
It's called Who Farted? But
Isn't that the operative question of anyone at any age?
Sorry.
Talk about all through the generations, appealing to anyone from the age of 2 months old to 200 years old. There you go.
Well, Davy, I've just been reading your latest publication, The Gift, and your artwork, actually, in some of the printing, you see the wrinkling of the paper. So you're using watercolor on soft paper?
Well, what happened was I actually was in a shop and I found this lovely photo album. It was just all white card. It looked like nice paper, so I just bought it and started to draw on it. And then the story sort of came out on the in the little book, you see.
So you were
And then-
kind of making it up as you went along, working straight onto those pages.
That's right, yes.
There's a song with that title, by the way, Kev. Name that band, Kev.
What,
We're
making
making
it up?
it up as we go along.
I actually don't know.
All right, you'll have to find out. I'm not spilling the beans there. But Davy, I like your style. I think that's a great way to make art. I'm a big fan of urgent art.
Yes, thanks.
And I'm jealous of musicians who can write songs and in 3 minutes pour their guts out to, their fans or themselves. And I think that's a great way to actually tell a story, personal story.
Well, we sort of had the skeleton of the story, and then I showed it to Peter Duncan, who was the editor of it, and he said, "Well, I've shown it to people who aren't into comics and don't know the whole origin of certain characters and that type of thing." So I went back and added more pages, and then as I looked over it, I thought, "Oh, need another page in there, give a bit of balance and that type of thing, and sort of show how things have changed through it and that type of thing." So it's turned out it's 52 pages, but
Yeah, it's a 52-page book, The Gift, which I don't think it's too much of a spoiler. It's kind of a parallel to the Batman story, but a sweeter, cartoony retelling with new characters.
sort of a pastiche or a sort of a Batman, and but I love that whole idea of him having a butler and but having this huge bat cave in the basement. And then I was thinking to myself, well, of course, Batman drives in the Batmobile in the big road, and I thought to myself, who made that road? Because it can't be workmen, because you'd have to kill them,
Exactly.
So it had to be Alfred. And then when you see the movies, it gets even more ridiculous, because there's a whole lake opening up and the bat crawler or whatever it is comes out, and you think to yourself, who on earth built that, unless it was Rachel Waller or somebody like that, but you sort of think Alfred has a lot to do. He's got a big house to look after, the garden and everything, and make sure Batman's wounds are stitched up and that type of thing.
I
So
think I think he has a doppelganger.
that alien, he just hasn't completely changed,
Yeah. Yeah.
It was the 1980s where this kind of thinking set in, wasn't it? When we started asking questions like, who changes the tyres on the Batmobile? Before that, there was a great suspension of disbelief that it's hard to get back to.
Yeah.
We were looking at Captain Marvel. Davey, tell us a little bit more about Captain Marvel, the comic, because it's got a lot of story to it.
Well, Captain Marvel, that comic that you showed a copy of, you can see the Kirby influences in some of the other panels. I chose that one because there wasn't a lot of Kirby in it. Maybe the man's hand, when he points his finger, you can see some of the sinews in the hand, and I thought that they were very Kirby, but you didn't pick up on it.
When I see Kirby artwork from the 1940s, it doesn't look like Kirby artwork to me. It isn't until the 50s, when he's doing the romance comics, that you start to see characteristic cheekbones and shaping that we then recognize from things like the Marvel superhero comics. But the 40s stuff, his figure drawing is just different. It has a lot of different styles to it.
The thing I like about that is, if you look at the background, there's no straight lines. They're lines, but there's no, they're not perfectly straight.
The verticals aren't vertical.
No, but it tells you everything you need to know where you are and who you're with in the scene. And that to me is critical. It even tells you how to get out by establishing a window.
There's a lot I like about the 30s and 40s early comic artwork that has a happy amateurism to it. Like, for example, looking at this composition, a lot of editors would have said, actually, your guys aren't quite positioned right. Look at all that space behind Billy. That's kind of wasted space. And the overlapping voice bubbles and the stems, which seem to be going into the backs of people's heads. There's a lot of things that you simply wouldn't allow now, but then the game was different, wasn't it? A lot more about producing at speed, producing at quantity.
But it's nice. It's a lovely layout, isn't it? There's a simplicity. It could have been just done with a blank background, but it wouldn't be the same. You sort of feel there's more story to it with that background. The more detail. What's in his bureau, and who's the picture of, and that type of thing. What happened to the string in his vertical blinds?
Yeah, I actually think they're outdoors. I think they're stood in front of a shop doorway.
Interesting. And I just see a tangent where the man on the left's word balloon line is extending into a needle pointer.
Yeah.
All I see now is a tangent. Now I'm breaking out into a rash now that I see a tangent.
Listeners at home, this is another one of these editorial terms that you'll only hear from a professional editor, and that's a professional art editor too. A tangent is when one line joins into another line which it's not supposed to. So the edge of a building lining up with a caption box, that would be a no-no.
But it's still very beautiful.
It is beautiful. And the thing that I was hoping you were going to tell us about Captain Marvel is that Captain Marvel isn't the Captain Marvel you're thinking of, because it was a character created for one publishing company as a kind of rip-off of Superman, and then national periodicals who published Superman took them to court and stopped them publishing.
So it became Shazam.
Clearly, I'm the only person who finds that story interesting. Nobody wants to elaborate.
I'm not a superhero person, and everything I know about Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, I gleaned from Tom Scioli's biographies about both Stan the Man and Jack Kirby Crackle. So I can tell you that the first time I heard Shazam was from television in the 70s, when there was a live action series on Saturdays called Shazam. So I'm not a superhero fan or purist, but I do find this fascinating. And I think it was a really good choice, Davy.
And it's another example of the great difference that we had between the UK and the US, because in the comics, we would see the adverts for the Saturday morning TV, and we'd see adverts for the Fantastic Four animation, and for the Shazam animation, and for Spidey and Friends was another. And I didn't get to see these probably until the YouTube days, at which point I discovered they were shit.
Yeah. They were not great.
You want to watch the Captain Planet Goes to Belfast one? It's spectacularly shit.
Does that actually exist?
Yeah, and the somebody tries to detonate an atomic bomb in Belfast, and Captain Planet and his chums have to stop them. It's one of those ones where all the Irish people have Scottish accents, that type of thing, and it's sort of a cringe, when you listen to the accents,
There's a lot of groundskeeper Willie going on.
There is, yes. Now, funny enough, that was a little tenuous link between Kirby and Belfast. Jack Kirby, of course, produced thousands of pages of artwork, but the person who produced the most artwork was Kurt Swan.
Interesting. I will jump in and say that for me, Alex Toth was the hero of cartoons of my youth. So, and Johnny Quest and Marine Boy were the two animated shows that I liked in the 70s and 80s. But I must say that it's fascinating to hear some of this history. So thanks for sharing.
Alex Toth and Jack Kirby, of course, both came from comics to doing the character designs for animation, where there was way more money to be had. The Kurt Swan link, before we forget.
So Kurt Swan, of course, produced thousands of pages of comics, but actually he first got his big break when he was a soldier stationed in Omagh in Northern Ireland, and it was during the big push for D-Day. So they were all sort of brought over and billeted and that type of thing. And some officers saw his drawings and thought he'd be perfect to paint a mural for the Officers Club in the Central Hotel in Belfast. So he painted a mural for the Central Hotel, and somebody from Stars and Stripes, the newspaper, saw his work, saw the mural, and then, of course, he started working for Stars and Stripes, and from Stars and Stripes was picked up in DC Comics.
Wow.
That represents everything I tell my comics editing students. You have to get visible, and
Yeah.
then the world will notice. You have to get your hands dirty and throw red and black ink, put some lines down, make your own comics and zines, get visible, and others will follow. Hopefully you'll make money.
And we have to hope that if you are going to launch a career in comics, you don't have to wait until the next World War to be seen.
Exactly. Although, let's face it, sadly, we're living in strange times.
Things bode badly in that way. Well, we've just been having a look at a bit of Captain Marvel stroke Shazam drawn by Jack Kirby, which we weren't expecting. Should we have a look at what Shelley's brought in?
Yes. This ought to be good.
Listener at home, you'll see it in all the places I described earlier. That is, if you want to see it, Davy, brace yourself and describe what you can see on the screen.
Well, there's a man, he looks like a sort of a rockabilly type of guy, kind of Elvis inspired. He's got the big quiff, he's got sideburns and spotty face type of thing. He's got a leather jacket and he's kissing a young woman very passionately. Her eyes are closed, his eyes are closed. Both of their mouths are open, which suggests that it's a more modern comic. And she seems to be pressed against a wall. He's got his hands behind her head on the wall. They're pressing against the wall. And I'm not sure where her hands are. It seemed to be, oh no, one of them, there are fingers on her throat, but I think they're her fingers. And apart from that, he's wearing a watch. And it says, can I read this out?
Yeah.
He pressed lips to hers, forcing her mouth wide to accept his
black
pus-filled tongue.
So I don't think it's a sort of a romance comic. It looks a bit, it's not unlike David Lapham's work, but I don't think it is.
It is.
We can safely say it's not the Beano. And from the technical angle, although I can never do justice to this description, having had Shelley describe the previous one so well, it's line art. I would say it's actual brush art, although it could be from a vintage that could be digital, but I think it's not digital. The lettering at the top has been done on mock lined paper to suggest it comes from a diary entry. So we're looking at storytelling where someone is taking the pages of a diary, using those as the captions that accompany the live action or summed up, sorry.
There are spotted blacks in it too, Kev.
Oh yeah, look at the spotting of those blacks.
Right? You can practically feel the highlights on that leather jacket. You can hear the crinkling of that faux leather jacket. And I think that the quiff, that rockabilly quiff, is just beautifully inked. Would you say, Davy, that looks pretty nice?
Yes, it looks really nice. Yes, nice feathering on the hair there, just over his ear.
We ought to publish a glossary to go with this episode. We have had every technique described. Feathering is, of course.
It's going to cost you more in chocolate, Kev.
Listener at home, feathering is that shaped line that you've seen all the time with inking, with black line on a white background, where the line starts off thick, it goes down thin, just like a feather. It's called feathering.
And how about that hard edge shadow on the jacket?
Well, we're just showing off now.
I know. So when am I allowed to jump in and tell you who it is?
Well, Davy, you guessed David Lapham, was that right? And Shelley, was that right?
Yes, it is David Lapham. Davy, I'm impressed that you knew that was David Lapham. This is some of his early work from Stray Bullets.
Stray Bullets, yes. I read a lot of Stray Bullets. The story was riveting in it, and I sort of picked up a lot of them, but I liked his artwork as well.
And David Lapham writes and draws.
He does, although he co-writes with his wife, Maria, who doesn't always get the spotlight. So whenever I talk about David, I mention Maria because She's also part of the brains behind the operation. And I've worked with David quite a few times in my career. I feel lucky, honored to say that.
What's the history of Stray Bullets? When did it first appear?
Stray Bullets, I believe, was launched in 1995. And I had been in comics for a good 7 or 8 years at that point. And you know, comics, there were good years and bad years. And I wasn't even sure if I found my place in comics because I always felt like I skewed more indie than a mainstream publisher. But Vertigo was good. They let me flex. But it wasn't till I picked up Stray Bullets #1, read it from cover to cover, that I dropped to my knees and said, I'm a comics lifer. Because I just thought David Lapham and Maria Lapham know how to tell a crime fiction story. And I was certain they were from my generation. And sure enough, I got to meet them. They were, and the rest is history, because I think that this comic deserved every award and every accolade. And the fact that Stray Bullets continued for many, many years is a testament to indie comics. And in my humble opinion, David Lapham is one of the greatest American storytellers of my generation. And Stray Bullets is the apex of crime fiction storytelling in any medium. Mic drop.
The 90s really did see a breakthrough in realism in comics, didn't it? There were experiments in the 1980s, but the publishing business was really hidebound by that superheroes were all. That clung on for a long time, didn't it?
Ugh. Gag. Yes. Well, David and Maria changed that.
Audiences, I think, were ready to accept these things, but were the big wigs upstairs always ready to accept new ideas?
Not really. Although I had a much better track record at Vertigo because my boss, Karen Berger, had my back. And she also believed in publishing stories that were like not conventional, that subverted expectations. And as soon as I could, I hired David Lapham to do work for me. His first book was called Silverfish, which was, if you haven't heard of it, you must find it. It was brilliant.
I'm not familiar with it. I always think he's like he kind of writes the way Shane Black writes. You know, there's humor, but there's sort of a blackness to it as well. You know, sort of
Oh, yeah.
hard edge. Yeah. Daniel Dusk was like that, wasn't it? It wasn't even inked. It was Gene Colan.
Oh,
Was it
yes,
sort
that
of
was a DC
hard?
title in the 80s, wasn't it?
It was the artwork, and it was beautiful.
That was when they started printing in litho so they could print Gene Colan from pencils.
That's correct. Yes.
Who published Stray Bullets?
It was first published by David and Maria's El Capitan
That's right.
imprint, but then it eventually moved to Image, and they collected all of the Stray Bullets individual issues into a gigantic phone book sized volume called Uber Alles, which I think is still available. It is a brick. In fact, it can be used as a weapon. It's so big, and it hurts to hold on to it on your lap. I mean, you really might bruise yourself. So I recommend tracking down all the single issues. It's worth it.
Yeah.
The big question for me was always how well things were selling, because as cool kids in the 90s, we championed all the stuff that Vertigo was doing. I was always loving Sandman Mystery Theatre, was a particular favourite for me. But then I'm thinking, this can't be selling as much as Superman. Was Superman subsidising the cool comics, or were the cool comics actually really standing on their own?
Well, if you're asking me about Vertigo, David didn't really work for me until the mid 2000s. But I can tell you that, Vertigo really had to have one or two big hits to support all of the more arty titles. So when Sandman ended officially, we were lucky to have Why the Last Man and Fables to pick up the mantle.
Right.
Because those books sold well enough that we could start peppering the rest of the line with things that maybe were hit and miss. And I will say that David Lapham's work for Vertigo that I brought to life, did well enough to have a cult following. We had Young Liars, which ran for 18 issues, and he actually did a book for my Black Crown imprint years later called Lodger, which was incredible. In fact, it was something that we tried to get Vertigo to publish, but couldn't quite get it approved based on how the market was being very fickle. We really did have to sort of pare down the Vertigo line at that point, maybe in the 20 teens, because, we were seeing changes.
This was a significant thing that the other major comic publisher along those lines, Marvel, wasn't ever, I think, doing anything as experimental as DC did with Vertigo. And
except they did it first with Epic. Archie Goodwin's Epic line was really amazing.
But wasn't it short-lived?
It was. But that's corporate America not understanding that you need to give an imprint more than 2 years to actually reach its audience or cultivate a new audience. It's a shame. But that also happened with the Minx line. I actually launched a line of YA comics back in 2008 and was given 2 years to make that successful, and it ended. But fortunately, many of those writers and artists went on to have terrific careers and pretty much champion the graphic novel movement as we know it now.
Well, yes, books like Preacher and Lucifer, which have made the crossover into TV and other media, were very much...
And iZombie. Speaking of Mike Allred, iZombie was one of those books. And how about Bodies? Cy Spencer's Bodies made the big leap, star-studded cast on Netflix.
It took the best part of 20 years from the inception of these great ideas to them making their transition, but they made it. All testament to you guys keeping the faith and somehow persuading the folks upstairs to keep it going.
Lots of chocolate. British chocolate makes people happy. What can I say? We don't like American chocolate. Don't even think about American chocolate, Davy. I hope you've never had it.
My daughter lives in Australia, and she says she really misses Greg's vegan sausage rolls. They don't have any Greg's bakeries in there.
Yeah, neither do we, and I miss Greg's too.
Our sympathy goes out to all football supporters who must be suffering during the World Cup from the lack of all of these home treats. Well, we've been looking at a couple of crackers, really surprising choices for me. And of course, showing off my idiocy because everybody else knew what they were looking at. We were looking at David Maria Lapham and David Lapham's art from Stray Bullets, chosen by Shelley. And we were looking at, surprisingly, Jack Kirby's artwork on Captain Marvel, aka Shazam, from the 1940s. Thank you both for bringing in such wonderful pieces of work. Where can we find you guys online? Shelley?
Well, you can find me at offregister.press, which is a tiny comics and design lab that I run with my way more famous and cool husband, Philip Bond.
And Davy, where do we find you?
Well, you can find me at Davy Francis Cartoons on Facebook and Sector 13 Comics. They produce some of my most recent work.
What you're saying is we go into a comic shop and we just hope you're there.
What you're looking for is a comic called Yao of a 6-page strip in it that never made it to Marvel. And I've got a 16-page strip in Splank, the Splank Annual. It's called Thunderbags. It's about aging superheroes. And then, of course, The Gift is just out and available from Sector 13 Comics.
That's what we're all looking out for. Thank you to my guests. Let's hear it again for Shelley Bond and Davy Francis.
Thank you, Kev.
Thank you.
Hey, if you're enjoying this episode of Comic Cuts, the panel show, don't forget there's an entire back catalogue and a first season for you to catch up on. My guests have included comic folk like Brian Bolland, Rachel Smith, Metafrog, Gary Northfield, Nigel Octoluni, Nigel Parkinson, Laura Howell, Sonia Long, David Leitch. We've had the comics laureate Hannah Berry, resident alien creator Peter Hogan, podcasters like Adam Roach, legendary singer-songwriter Dean Friedman, Jessica Martin. The list of comedians includes Ashley Storey, Bethany Black, Will Hodgson, Paul Carenza, Izzy Lawrence, Doug Siegel. There is too many to list. And they've brought in comics from Marvel and DC to the Bunty and the Eagle, from Robert Crumb to Viz, webcomics, obscure manga, all points in between. And sometimes we don't talk about comics at all. Don't forget to click and subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend. For example, What could these two be talking about?
Man with a swastika on his shirt. He's got his trousers down, his bum out, and he's standing with his feet in a bucket of pig shit on a stage. There's lots of people looking behind him, and he's saying, oh yes, I can feel it coming out now. Go on, fuck off out of it, you blasted queen.